finally tackling the discovery set from Atelier Materi. So if you're interested in this house, please stay tuned. Hello guys, welcome back. I'm Eloise. I hope everyone is doing great. So today I'm finally going to delve into this discovery set that I've had sitting around for a few months now. It's from the house of Atelier Materi. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this house. I saw some people talk about it on YouTube. I was curious about some of the fragrances and I ordered a discovery set. I believe that I actually chose the fragrances that would go in here, and I think one of them was the Ambre fragrance, Bois d'Ambre, and maybe they didn't have it, maybe it was out of stock, but they replaced it with something else. So nonetheless, we have 6 here, and I have smelled these before. I've been playing around with them here and there, so they're not first impressions, but they're certainly not reviews of the fragrances. So let's dive in and talk about what these smell like. So the first one we're going to talk about is called Narcisse Taijin. I assume that this focuses on the narcisse flower, which I actually don't have too much experience with. Oh, this is very floral. You have a zinginess like from ginger and a little bit of freshness from pear, but I know there's tuberose in here. It's all about the florals. The narcisse flower is very heady. It's a little green. There are definitely some green touches in here. You have to like a floral fragrance to like this. I don't know that this is my thing, personally. It's pretty. It's an interplay between the florals and this freshness, this like zinginess from ginger. And I like the pear and I like that tuberose touch, but the tuberose is not really coming through as much as the narcisse, which is really heady and has green touches. It's fresh and it's floral. I know there's patchouli in the base, but I'm not getting anything dark here. So we'll let it dry down. But it's pretty, it's just a little too floral dominant for my taste personally. So the next one is actually one that I was interested in my search for chocolate or cacao dominant fragrances. But there is a but here. I have smelled this a few times. The opening of this fragrance is so great. I get straight up cacao that's not sweetened. It's not too dark. It's so good and it's boozy. There's a rum note in here. I like that it's not too sweet. It's almost like I'm envisioning the cacao powder that you use to bake, where it's not sweetened and it's like a semi-sweet, dark colored powder. And I get the boozy touch. The problem with this fragrance is it's all about the opening and then it dries down to something completely different and a little boring, unfortunately. I lose the chocolate, I lose the cacao as this dries down. I know there's also a white tobacco note in here, but I can't say that I get tobacco. Yeah, the problem with this one is that the chocolate kind of disappears and then it dries down to this woody, warm sweetness from tonka. There's a little bit of sweetness that comes through in the dry down, but it has a really great chocolatey, boozy opening. But it loses me as it dries down. Okay, so the next one is Cedre Figalia. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly. I try, but sometimes I fail. So this is a fig fragrance. But the thing about this one is that it has fig leaf. So it's all about the fig leaf as opposed to like a photorealistic fig fruit, which is a different kind of fragrance. So if you're thinking like Diptyque's fig fragrance, this is a different thing. This is very, very green. It's herbal. I think there's basil in here. I think there's a note of spinach. It's very green, herbal, and it's the fig leaf. So you really have to like the idea of a green fragrance. It's very fresh, clean. I will say it's not a photorealistic fig fruit, but it certainly is a photorealistic fig leaf fragrance. Wow, it's really herbaceous, it's really green, it's really clean. And then as it dries down, you have some of the woody notes that come through. I think there's a cedar note in here and another wood note. I can't recall right now. But I remember thinking that brightness and the herbaceous aspects in the opening sort of dissipate as it starts to dry down and those woody notes come through. The woody notes really complement the fig leaf in this fragrance. It's a nice combination in the dry down. Yeah, it's really clean, woody, and it's like figgy and woody at the same time. It's kind of nice. It's fresh. If you're looking for something very green and you like the idea of fig leaf, it's nice. I remember thinking that it was a nice dry down, actually. So that's Cedre Figalia. So the next one I was also really interested in because I love iris fragrances. And this one is Iris Ebene. So this one, the minute I sprayed and smelled this, it reminded me of another fragrance that's one of my favorites. Oh, it's this Rudy Iris. And it smells so similar to Iris Malikan from Maison Crivelli. There are differences, but they really do smell very, very similar. It's such a Rudy Iris. There is a pimento note in here, and there's also, I think, mandarin at the top. So you have this little bit of spicy, almost like a little smoky. There's pepper, there's suede, there's pimento at the top. But all in all, it's a very Rudy Iris. And as it dries down, sandalwood starts to come through. And that's where I think this one takes a different path from Iris Malikan, although they are very, very similar. The difference is that Iris Malikan to me is a little more sweet, and it has a little more body to it. There's a bit of a denseness here, but they both have that Rudy Iris. It's a really nice iris fragrance, but the sandalwood definitely comes through. And where Iris Malikan is like a gourmand iris leather fragrance with vanilla touches or sweet touches, and it's sweeter than this one. This one is a little different because the sandalwood comes through, and I can detect the sandalwood in the fragrance. I definitely detect it. So it's nice. You have this earthy iris. You have this suede texture. There's like a texture to it. You have a hint of smokiness. And then you have this warm sandalwood. I would say it's a nice iris fragrance. I personally don't need, this would be a little redundant in my collection because I feel like Iris Malikan has way too many similarities. I actually did a side-by-side comparison earlier. Yeah, the dry down is very different. In Iris Ebene, the sandalwood comes through, and it's a different dry down from Iris Malikan is sweeter, and it has this denseness to it. This is a powerful fragrance. The Iris Ebene is definitely lighter, I would say. Okay, so the next one is in the gold package, and it's one of the Extrait de Parfum, and this is Neroli Hasbaya. This also reminds me of something that I own that I brought here to the table. Oh, this is really not spraying. It's just kind of dripping everywhere. Okay, all over my fingers. Okay, this is intoxicatingly sweet and floral, and there's something like chewy about this, almost dough-like. There is an almond note in here and also pistachio, but it's also very, very dominated by the orange blossom and the neroli. It's so sweet. For those that don't like sweet fragrances, I don't think that you would appreciate this. It's floral and it's sweet, and it has this like chewiness to it. I'm not sure how to explain it or how to describe it. And in my mind, I feel like it's coming from the almond and the pistachio. I don't know why. I think I do get the pistachio. It's so good. It's almost addictive. I couldn't stop smelling this when I sprayed it a few days ago. You have to like orange blossom and neroli. There's a little green touch in there, and I really think what makes this unique, because I've never smelled anything like this, it must be the almond and the pistachio in here. So what this reminds me of is my beloved Orme Paris 28 Degrees. I have a huge dent in this, and even though I've moved away in the last year from wearing fragrances with this scent profile, little sweet, floral, I will never get rid of this bottle. Look how cool it is. Isn't it cool? Orme Paris bottles are so cool. I purchased this in Florence, and it just has this sentimental value. The trip was amazing. It was just, I was in great company, and it just has a lot of memories attached to it, and I wore so much of this. I haven't worn this in a bit. Neroli Hasbaya smells a lot like this. It's just a lot sweeter. 28 degrees is not as sweet. There is sweetness, and this is a white flower, ylang ylang. There's something a little bit tropical and creamy about this, and then there's the sweetness. It's such a great fragrance. The Neroli Hasbaya is sweeter and has this nuttiness to it, and it's, I would say, a little more difficult to wear than the 28 degrees. I feel like this on my skin, maybe one spray, more than one spray, I think would be like intoxicating, but it's so good, you almost want to eat it. It's a yellow floral fragrance with a lot of sweetness and a nutty, chewy component to it. So Neroli Hasbaya has notes of orange blossom, pistachio, neroli, and almond at the top, orange blossom and rose in the mid, sandalwood and musk at the base. So I don't get any of the rose, and I think as it dries down, it gets a little powdery, but it's still really sweet. You have to like that yellow floral sort of thing to like this. I don't think this is a safe blind buy. I think a lot of people could like this if they like that sweet orange blossom type of fragrance. And I think it's unique because of this pistachio almond aspect to the fragrance. This might be a bit much for me, but I will say that it is addictive in the sense that I can't stop smelling it. So, and I have 28 degrees, so this would be redundant and too sweet for my taste probably. So that's Neroli Hasbaya. And the last one is an amber fragrance, one of my favorites. This is Ambre Papier. This one I recall liking. Oh, these testers are dripping everywhere here. I get the saffron right at the opening, and there's this like boozy element to it. It's almost like I'm smelling coffee, and there's like a sticky consistency, like a sticky gooey consistency. I feel like the saffron is really, really obvious. I know there's benzoin in here. This is a lot about the benzoin, and then there's the myrrh. So it's, again, both resinous and balsamic, and it has a nice texture to it. But I do get a lot of saffron. And it's almost boozy. It's a nice fragrance. And the sweetness is in the background, but it's definitely there. It's not too sweet, and it's also a little woody. So it opens up really great, and I will say that as this dries down, it is very, very similar to a fragrance that a lot of people know and love, and that is Yves Saint Laurent's Baby Cat. So there's something about the DNA in here, the saffron, the pepper, and the vanillic aspects, the sweetness, are definitely reminiscent of the Baby Cat DNA. And in the dry down, it's really very, very similar to Baby Cat, in fact. I'm gonna spray Baby Cat. Baby Cat is sweeter. And it has so much of the pepper, right? The elemi, I think. And there's so much saffron. It's like leathery. Wow, Baby Cat makes Ambre Papier seem a little lighter. But maybe I should spray it on skin in all fairness. Although these testers are leaking everywhere. They're not really spraying. They're not really spraying, they're leaking. So the mandarin and the jasmine come through in Ambre Papier, whereas in Baby Cat you don't have that. Yeah, Baby Cat is straight up vanilla, saffron, leathery. So the Ambre Papier is it's a bit brighter, but as it dries down and the citrus starts to dissipate, that's when it starts to resemble Baby Cat a lot. And I had it on skin last night and last week, one night last week. And when it totally dries down, it really is very similar. I guess what you're left with in the dry down of Ambre Papier is very similar to the DNA of Baby Cat. But there's more going on in Ambre Papier. It has more transitions from the top to the mid to the dry down. This one is a nice one. So while you have this amber fragrance that has this sweetness and this brightness from the jasmine, you also have this warmth, you have the myrrh, you have balsamic qualities. It almost has this like sticky quality to it in terms of consistency. And then you have something that almost comes off like coffee. So you have an interplay between some of the brighter notes and some of these darker, ambery, resinous and balsamic notes. It's interesting. It's a nice one. I would say try it out if you think that description sounds good. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching, hanging out with me as we tested these Atelier Materi sample fragrances. Let me know if you guys are familiar with this house or any of the fragrances that we spoke about in today's video. As always, until next time, bye guys.